My own mother screamed in court. She is mentally sick. I stayed silent. Welcome to my new story. My mother looked the judge right in the eyes and said I was mentally incompetent. She said I had been unstable my whole life. She said I should never be allowed to handle my own finances. She said I should not be allowed to inherit anything from my grandmother. I sat in the Milwaukee County Courthouse on March 14th. I wore my grandmother's pearl earrings. I did not say a single word. Not one. The judge was a woman in her mid-60s. She had silver hair. She wore reading glasses that rested on her nose. She listened to my mother's attorney finish his opening statement. Then she made a face I knew very well. It was the face a judge makes when something does not make sense. It was the face she makes when the story does not add up. She looked at Bradley Fenwick, my mother's young attorney. His suit was too big. His tie looked stiff, like it was new and never used. She asked him one simple question. She asked if he truly had no idea who I was. She asked if he truly had no idea who the woman was that he was calling mentally incompetent. Bradley blinked. He looked down at his notes. He looked up at me. He looked back at the judge. My mother's face changed fast. First she looked confident. Then she looked confused. Then she looked pale. It happened in seconds. Let me tell you how I ended up in that courtroom. My name is Nancy Bergland. I am 33 years old. I work as a certified fraud examiner in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. For the past 7 years, I have focused on one kind of crime more than any other. Elder financial abuse. That means I investigate cases where someone steals from older people who cannot always protect themselves. Some criminals forge checks. Some use fake power of attorney papers. Some trick seniors into changing wills. Some manipulate them with lies, guilt, pressure, or fear. I have seen every trick you can imagine. I have seen even more tricks you would never believe. I have testified as an expert witness in many cases. I have sat in courtrooms and explained how money moved, why it moved, and who benefited. I have explained patterns. I have explained timelines. I have explained how a single withdrawal can reveal a long plan. I have explained how one signature can tell you who held the pen and who held the power. Most of the cases I testified in ended in conviction. Many of those times I testified in front of this same judge, Judge Patricia Kowalczyk. She once told another attorney in open court that I was one of the most credible expert witnesses she had seen in 2 decades on the bench. My mother did not know any of that. My mother and I had not spoken in 19 years. Here is what you need to understand about my mother, Daisy Hollister. When I was 14, my parents divorced. It was not friendly. It was not peaceful. It was a battle. My father moved to Oregon. My mother remarried within 3 months. She married a man named Theodore Hollister. He owned 3 laundromats in a Wisconsin county near where we lived. And my mother decided her new life had no room for her old daughter. She did not fight for custody. She did not call me on my birthday. She sent one Christmas card the first year and then nothing after that. No phone calls. No visits. No letters. No apologies. No explanation. She simply left me behind like an object she did not want anymore. My grandmother raised me. My grandmother's name was Dorothy Bergland. She lived in a small house in Eau Claire. She was a retired elementary school teacher. She never made more than $42,000 a year in her life. But she was careful. She tracked every penny. She kept receipts in envelopes. She labeled the envelopes. She balanced her checkbook every Sunday morning with coffee. Her coffee always had exactly 2 sugars and a splash of whole milk. That was her routine. That was her peace. That woman could tell you where every dollar went. She could tell you what she spent at the grocery store and what she spent at the pharmacy. She could tell you which bills were due and what day they were due. She could tell you which store gave better prices for paper towels. She could tell you exactly how much she paid for her living room rug and what year she bought it. She taught me everything I know. She just did not know she was training a fraud examiner. My grandmother died 8 months ago. Congestive heart failure. She was 81. She died peacefully in her sleep in the same home where she lived for 43 years. I was holding her hand. She left me everything. The house. Her savings. A small life insurance policy. It was not a huge fortune, but it was hers. She earned it by teaching 3rd graders to read for 36 years. She earned it by living carefully. She earned it by doing the right thing even when no one was watching. 3 weeks after the funeral, I got a letter from an attorney named Bradley Fenwick. My mother was contesting the will. According to the letter, Daisy Hollister claimed my grandmother had serious mental decline in her last years. She claimed I isolated my grandmother from family. She claimed I manipulated a vulnerable elderly woman into leaving me her entire estate. Yes, my mother. The woman who had not visited her own mother in 15 years. The woman who had not called on holidays. The woman who abandoned her own child. She was accusing me of elder abuse. At first I laughed. I laughed because it was so ridiculous. Then I stopped laughing because the letter said something else. It said my mother claimed she had documentation. It said she had evidence that I had a history of mental instability going back to my teenage years. It said she was asking the court to declare me mentally incompetent. It said she wanted a conservator appointed to manage my grandmother's estate. And the proposed conservator was, of course, Daisy Hollister. That night I called my boyfriend Cameron. Cameron Linkfist is a high school history teacher. He comes from the kind of family that still does Sunday dinners. The kind of family that keeps photo albums in order by year. His parents have been married for decades. He does not understand dysfunction the way I do. He thinks people talk things out. He thinks families choose love. He thinks apologies mean change. He told me I should reach out to my mother. Maybe there was a misunderstanding. Maybe she felt guilty about the past. Maybe this was her strange way of reconnecting. I love Cameron. I do. But sometimes he says things that make me wonder if he has ever met a real person outside of a perfect painting. Because here is the truth. My mother remembered the exact dollar amount of my grandmother's savings. She put that number into a legal document. She knew it down to the last dollar. But she still did not know if my birthday was in March or May. It is amazing how memory works when money is involved. Before we continue, if you are enjoying this story, please subscribe. Tell me in the comments where you are watching from and what time it is there. I read every comment and it truly means a lot to me. Thank you for being here. Now back to my mother and her plan. Within 2 weeks the situation got worse. My mother did not just contest the will. She filed a formal petition in probate court. She claimed I was mentally incompetent and needed a conservator immediately. She wanted emergency powers. She wanted the bank accounts frozen until the court made a decision. She did not want time. She wanted control. Her evidence was creative. I will give her that. When I was a teenager, after she abandoned me, I spent about 8 months talking to a school counselor. I was depressed. I struggled with adjustment. I had feelings of abandonment and low self-worth. That is a normal response when your own mother decides you are not worth keeping. The counselor wrote notes about my emotions. My mother's attorney used those notes as proof of lifelong mental illness. My mother also produced a signed statement from my stepsister, Merlin Hollister. Merlin was Theodore's daughter from his first marriage. Merlin was 28 years old. In her statement, she claimed I always seemed unstable and erratic. She claimed she had serious concerns about my ability to manage money. Merlin was 9 years old the last time she saw me. I had not spoken to her in 19 years. She knew nothing about me. Nothing. But legal proceedings do not care about what feels fair. Once a petition like this is filed, the machine starts moving. You have to respond. You have to hire a lawyer. You have to appear in court. You have to prove you are not crazy. And while you fight, the rumor spreads. My firm put me on administrative review. My boss Harold called me into his office. He was a decent man. He hired me right after I finished my certification program. He told me he believed me. He told me he knew the claim was nonsense. But the firm could not keep sending an expert witness to court if another court was questioning her competency. It was a liability issue. An insurance issue. A credibility issue. I was not fired, but I was benched. No new cases. No testimonies. No work that mattered. 7 years of building my reputation, and my mother damaged it with one legal filing. I started piecing things together. Theodore and Daisy were in financial trouble. That became clear quickly. The laundromats were failing. People do not rely on laundromats the way they used to, not when cheap washers and dryers are everywhere. Theodore owed hundreds of thousands to creditors. Their house had a second mortgage. Their credit cards were maxed. My grandmother's estate was not about family for them. It was about survival. It was a lifeline. But I still did not know the full scope of what they had done. Not yet. Cameron and I had our first real fight about 2 weeks into this mess. His parents had started asking questions. His mother is sweet. She bakes cookies for school events. She asked him gently if there was anything he did not know about me. Any secrets. Any history. Anything that might explain what my mother was claiming. Cameron came to my apartment and asked why I would not just take a psychological evaluation. He said it would prove I was fine. It would make the case go away. I told him that was not the point. The point was I should not have to prove my sanity because my estranged mother wanted money. The point was the accusation itself was the abuse. He said something about smoke and fire. He said it looked bad that I was refusing to cooperate. I told him to leave. He left. I sat alone in my apartment that night and looked at the photo of my grandmother on my bookshelf. The picture was from my college graduation. She was 73. She was beaming like I won the biggest award on earth. All I did was graduate with a degree in accounting, but to her it was everything. She used to say paper trails do not lie. She used to say people can make up stories and twist truth, but numbers are honest. Numbers tell you what happened if you know how to read them. That night I decided to read numbers. I was still listed as a joint holder on my grandmother's bank account. She added me 2 years before she died. She was still lucid when she did it. She said it was for convenience. She wanted me to help pay bills if she ever got tired. But now I think she knew something might happen. I think she was protecting herself. Or protecting me. I pulled bank statements for the last 2 years of her life. I made a spreadsheet. I tracked every deposit and every withdrawal. I categorized expenses. Utilities. Groceries. Pharmacy. Property taxes. Insurance. Everything. And then I found the first crack in my mother's story. In the final 11 months of my grandmother's life, there were 7 withdrawals that did not fit her normal pattern. Not bills. Not stores. Just cash withdrawals. Some were $4,000. Some were $12,000. Together they totaled $47,850. Each withdrawal happened within 3 days of a recorded visit from Daisy Hollister. My grandmother had mild cognitive decline near the end. Some days were foggy. Some days were sharp. She could forget where her glasses were and then quote poetry from memory an hour later. She was not incompetent. But she could be vulnerable. And my mother knew it. The woman accusing me of elder abuse had been stealing from her own mother. I did not sleep that night. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and coffee, and I did what I do for a living. I investigated. The bank withdrawals were only the beginning. My grandmother was meticulous, but in her final year things were more disorganized. I assumed it was her mind. Now I wondered if someone helped the disorganization along. The next weekend I drove to Eau Claire to go through her house carefully. Cameron offered to come with me. Things were still tense between us. I told him I needed to do it alone. The house smelled like her. Lavender. Old books. Clean air. That special kind of clean women of her generation seemed to create. I spent hours going through her filing cabinet. Her desk. Her drawers. Her closet. Her envelopes of receipts. Her notes. Her calendars. Then I remembered something I should have checked sooner. Her safe deposit box at the First National Bank of Eau Claire. She added me to that box years ago. I had only been there once when she wanted to store jewelry after a small break-and scare in the neighborhood. I forgot about it entirely. At the bank, the manager verified my identity and took me to the vault. It was cold and quiet. He opened the box and slid it toward me. Inside was what I expected. Jewelry. Her wedding ring from my grandfather. A few savings bonds. Her birth certificate. Her social security card. And something I did not expect. A brown leather journal I had never seen before. It was dated. The first entry was from 14 months before her death. The last entry was from 6 weeks before she passed. My grandmother knew what was happening. She documented everything. The first entry nearly broke me. She wrote that Daisy had called for the first time in years. Daisy sounded sweet. Daisy sounded apologetic. Daisy said she wanted to reconnect. She said she made mistakes. She said she wanted to do better. My grandmother wrote that she did not trust it. But she was old. She was tired. And maybe people could change. Then the entries got darker. Daisy visited in August and asked to borrow $2,000 for an emergency. My grandmother gave it to her. Daisy visited in October. She said Theodore was sick. She said they needed help with medical bills. My grandmother gave $4,000. Daisy visited in December. She brought Theodore. They asked my grandmother to sign papers that would make it easier for them to help manage her finances. My grandmother signed. She wrote in the journal that she was having a bad day. She wrote her mind felt foggy. She wrote she was not sure what she had agreed to. 2 weeks later, she had a good day. She looked at the papers again. She realized it was a power of attorney. It gave Daisy control over her accounts. She was ashamed. And that was the part that destroyed me. My grandmother was the strongest woman I knew. And she was ashamed that her own daughter tricked her. She did not want me to see her as weak. She did not want me to know she had been fooled. So she documented everything instead. Every visit. Every lie. Every amount. Every withdrawal. Paper trails do not lie. The final entry was written for me. She apologized. She said she tried to tell me many times but could not find the words. She said she knew Daisy would come for the money after she was gone. She said she wanted me to have proof. She wanted me to fight. She wrote that she always knew I was strong. She wrote that was why she knew I would win. I sat on the floor of the vault and cried until my chest hurt. Then I stopped crying. Then I worked. I examined the power of attorney document. My grandmother did sign it. The signature itself was real. That was the tragedy. She signed while confused and pressured. But the notarization was fake. The notary stamp belonged to a man named Ray Gustafson. He retired years earlier. The document was dated much later. Someone used an old stamp on a new paper. It was sloppy. It was obvious. It was a felony. Then I dug into Theodore Hollister's history. What I found made my stomach turn. Theodore's first wife died years ago. Theodore's mother died later. In both situations there were questions about the estates. In both situations money disappeared. No charges were filed. But patterns were there. Daisy did not marry a desperate man. She married a professional. A predator. And I was not their first victim. I was just the one who knew how to fight back. The next morning I called my attorney, Caroline Jankowski. Caroline was in her early 50s. She used to be a prosecutor. She moved into civil litigation after burnout. She was direct. She was sharp. She was not easily impressed. I told her everything. The journal. The bank records. The fake notarization. The pattern with Theodore's family. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she told me this was not only a civil matter. It was criminal. It could be federal. Mail fraud. Wire fraud. Elder exploitation. She asked what I wanted. I told her the truth. I wanted to destroy them. But I wanted to do it right. I wanted them to walk into court thinking they already won. I wanted them to commit to their lies under oath. I wanted the judge to see their confidence, their cruelty, their greed. Then I wanted to show the judge who I really was. Caroline smiled. She said she had hoped I would say that. The court date was March 14th. We had about 6 weeks. I prepared the way I prepare every investigation. I built a file. I made timelines. I cross-checked dates. I verified every fact multiple times. I triple-checked because that is what you do when your reputation is your work. Caroline filed my response to my mother's petition. It was simple and bland. It denied the allegations. It stated I was mentally competent. It requested a hearing. No evidence attached. No counterclaims. No warning. We did not want to tip them off. Bradley Fenwick called Caroline the next day. Caroline told me he sounded confused. He expected more drama. He expected a long emotional response. He expected panic. He expected me to beg. Instead, we gave him calm. 2 weeks before the hearing, Bradley scheduled my deposition. That is standard. The opposing attorney questions you under oath before court. They look for mistakes. They look for contradictions. They look for pressure points. Bradley asked about my education. I said I had an accounting degree. Bradley asked about my job. I said I worked in accounting. Bradley asked about my mental health history. I said I talked to a counselor briefly as a teenager after my parents divorced. I answered each question in the shortest possible way. I did not volunteer details. I did not explain. I did not defend myself. My mother watched the deposition by video. I could see her in the corner. I watched her expression shift slowly from nervous to confused to pleased. She thought I was broken. She thought I had no fight left. She did not realize the flat, quiet woman in that deposition was a performance. I have cross-examined fraudsters for years. People who stole money from seniors. People who lied easily. People who cried on cue. People who wore suits and acted innocent. My mother had no idea I knew that world better than she did. The week before the hearing, something unexpected happened. Merlin Hollister reached out through attorneys. She wanted to meet me. Caroline advised against it. She said it could be a trap. She said Merlin signed a statement against me. But during the deposition, I noticed something in Merlin's face. When Theodore's name came up, Merlin's jaw tightened. When my mother laughed, Merlin looked away. There was fear there. Or resentment. I agreed to meet Merlin at a coffee shop in a neutral town between Milwaukee and Eau Claire. Merlin looked tired. Thin. Dark circles under her eyes. Her nails were bitten down. She ordered black coffee and did not drink it. She apologized for the statement she signed. She said her father wrote it. She said he told her to sign. She said she did not have a choice. I asked what she meant. She stared at the table for a long time. Then she told me about Theodore's mother, Geraldine Hollister. Geraldine died years earlier. She lived in a nursing home in Pennsylvania. She had dementia. Real dementia. She could not remember her own name most days. Theodore had power of attorney. Theodore controlled her money. When Geraldine died, her estate had almost nothing left. Her home was sold. Her savings were gone. Theodore claimed nursing home costs took everything. Merlin believed him at the time. She was young. She trusted her father. Later she started asking questions. The numbers did not add up. The nursing home did not cost that much. The money went somewhere else. Merlin confronted Theodore once. Just once. She did not describe everything that happened after, but when she touched the inside of her wrist while speaking, I understood enough. Theodore was not just greedy. He was dangerous. Merlin said she was tired. She said she could not carry it anymore. She said she did not want to be part of what Daisy and Theodore were doing to me and to my grandmother. I told her I could not promise her comfort. But if she was willing to tell the truth under oath, I would make sure the prosecutor knew she cooperated. She agreed. That night I drove home feeling something I had not felt in weeks. Hope. Not just hope to win. Hope for justice. When I got back to my apartment, Cameron was there. He brought Thai food from the place I like. The one with curry that is too spicy, but I order anyway. He apologized for what he said about smoke and fire. He said his parents got into his head. He said he did not understand how cruel families can be. He said he was sorry he doubted me. I showed him the journal. I showed him the bank statements. I showed him the fake notarization. I showed him the pattern with Theodore's family. Cameron read everything quietly. When he finished, his face looked different. It was not pity. It was respect. He asked what I needed. I told him I needed him in that courtroom. I needed him to see me working, not just hurting. He promised he would be there. The night before court I drove to Eau Claire again. I parked near the cemetery where my grandmother was buried. I did not get out. I sat in the dark and looked at the snow on the stones. I thought about what she taught me. Paper trails do not lie. Numbers are honest. Tomorrow the numbers would speak. March 14th. Milwaukee County Courthouse. I arrived early. That is who I am. I wore a navy blazer. Not to make a statement. To look professional and plain. I was not there for attention. I was there to win. The courtroom was smaller than the ones where I usually testified. It was a probate courtroom. Quiet. Not many spectators. Just a few people waiting for their hearings. Cameron sat in the back row. 2 of my colleagues from my firm came too. They heard what was happening and wanted to support me. Caroline sat beside me at the table. Her briefcase was full of documents my mother did not know existed. Daisy arrived late, like she wanted everyone to wait for her. She wore a navy blazer. She wore pearl earrings. I recognized the earrings. They were my grandmother's. My mother must have taken them during a visit. That detail made me feel hot anger. Not because of the jewelry itself, but because it showed how easily she claimed what was not hers. Theodore walked behind her. His face looked serious and concerned. He played the role of the worried husband. The man who just wanted fairness. The man who wanted what was best. Merlin came in last. She did not look at me. She sat behind them and stared at her hands. Bradley Fenwick shuffled papers. He checked his phone. He adjusted his suit. He looked like a young man who thought he was in control. All rise. Judge Kowalczyk entered and took her seat. She looked at the file. She looked at Daisy. Then she looked at me. I saw recognition. A small change in her eyes. She knew me. Bradley began his opening statement. He talked about a mother concerned about her daughter. He talked about family conflict. He talked about an elderly woman who was vulnerable. He claimed I isolated my grandmother. He claimed I manipulated her. He waved my teenage counseling records like they were proof of lifelong illness. He never mentioned what I did for a living. He never researched beyond surface details. He assumed an accountant is just an accountant. When he finished, the judge allowed Daisy to speak. Daisy stood and smoothed her blazer. Her voice sounded calm at first. She said she was worried about me. She said she was worried about her mother's wishes. Then she changed. Her voice rose. She pointed at me. She said I was mentally sick. She said I was incompetent. She said I was unstable and should never be allowed to control finances, let alone inherit. She did not sound like a mother. She sounded like a person trying to win at any cost. I stayed silent. The judge watched Daisy's outburst without reacting. Then the judge turned to Bradley Fenwick and asked her simple question. She asked if he truly had no idea who I was. Bradley looked confused. He said I worked in accounting. He said I worked at a firm. The judge stared at him for a long moment. Then she turned to Caroline. Caroline stood. She did not perform. She did not waste words. She said we would present evidence that changed the entire story of this case. The judge nodded. Caroline handed evidence packets to the clerk. One went to the judge. One went to Bradley. Caroline began with bank records. She walked through the timeline. 7 cash withdrawals in the final year. Total $47,850. Each one close to a visit from Daisy. Then Caroline presented the power of attorney document and pointed out the notarization. She presented proof that the notary stamp belonged to a retired notary. The date on the document did not match the notary's active years. Bradley's face changed. He went pale. Caroline presented the journal. She read parts of my grandmother's entries in simple, clear language. Daisy called after years, sounding sweet. Daisy visited and asked for money. Daisy brought Theodore. Daisy pressured my grandmother into signing papers on a foggy day. My grandmother later realized the papers gave Daisy control. My grandmother felt ashamed. My grandmother documented everything. My grandmother wrote the truth for me to find. The courtroom was silent as Caroline read. My mother's face moved from shock to anger. She was not ashamed. She was furious to be exposed. Theodore sat still. His eyes were hard, like a man who knows the moment the trap closes. Caroline then explained Theodore's history. The missing money from his mother's estate. The suspicious pattern. The similarities. Caroline told the court that law enforcement had been notified and an investigation was beginning. When Caroline sat down, Judge Kowalczyk did not look surprised. She looked satisfied, like a puzzle piece had clicked into place. She asked Bradley if he had a response. Bradley asked for a recess. The judge granted it. Bradley leaned toward Daisy and whispered. I could not hear him, but I could see Daisy's face change. He was telling her who I was. He was telling her what he failed to research. He was telling her the judge knew me. He was telling her she was not facing a confused, scared daughter. She was facing a professional who investigates exactly this kind of crime. Daisy looked at me. Truly looked at me. I looked back. I did not smile. I did not gloat. I waited. When court resumed, Bradley stood and said his client wished to withdraw the petition. Judge Kowalczyk refused to let it end that way. She said given the evidence, she was referring the matter to the district attorney for potential criminal charges. She said she was also forwarding evidence to federal investigators. She denied the petition with prejudice. That means the petition could not be brought again. It was over. No screaming from me. No dramatic speech. No revenge post. Just evidence and consequences. That is how real justice happens. Not with loud moments. With paper trails. Before I finish, if you're still here, thank you. Please subscribe, leave a like, and tell me in the comments where you are watching from. I appreciate you more than you know. Now let me tell you what happened after court. Federal investigators moved faster than I expected. A special agent called me days later. She had reviewed the evidence. She pulled financial history going back many years. She found patterns beyond my grandmother. Daisy and Theodore were arrested in early spring. They faced serious charges. Wire fraud. Mail fraud. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Investigators reopened questions about Theodore's mother's estate. Forensic accountants found large unexplained transfers in the years before she died. Money that should have supported an elderly woman disappeared. Merlin cooperated. She testified. She gave details about her father's control and pressure. In exchange, she was treated as a cooperating witness, not a main target. The trial lasted weeks. I did not attend every day. I had my own work. I had my own cases. But I attended the verdict. Daisy was found guilty on multiple counts. She was sentenced to years in federal prison. She was ordered to pay restitution. Theodore was found guilty too. He received more years. Their businesses were seized and sold. Their property was sold. Their life built on stolen money collapsed. I received a letter from my mother later. I did not open it. My attorney read it and told me it was pages of excuses with no real apology. I did not respond. Some conversations are not worth having. My grandmother's estate was settled later that summer. I kept the house in Eau Claire. I could not sell it. It felt like selling her. Cameron and I visit sometimes. We sit on the porch. We drink coffee. I can almost see her there with her checkbook, her receipts, her calm routine. I kept her journal too. Not as evidence anymore. As a reminder. She was scared. She was ashamed. She was tricked. But she still protected me the best way she knew. With truth on paper. My firm reinstated me soon after the hearing. My boss apologized. My reputation recovered because the court record was clear and the judge's reaction spoke for itself. I returned to the work I do best. Helping seniors. Following the money. Building timelines. Protecting people who get targeted because criminals think they are easy. Some people think revenge is about anger. About hurting someone back. But for me, it was never about enjoying my mother's pain. It was about balance. It was about proof. It was about making sure greedy people who think they can take from others learn that paper trails still exist. My mother thought I was weak because I was quiet. She thought I was broken because I did not fight in public. She thought she could take everything from me because she had gotten away with taking things before. She forgot who raised me. A woman who kept receipts. A woman who believed numbers are honest. A woman who taught me that truth can outlast lies. And that is how I stayed silent in court and still won. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If you want more stories like this, there is another one waiting for you.